since 2016 up until now, 2024, it's our financial year end on the 31st of August, we've grown the office portfolio by 193%.
There's a school of thought that says all leases should be short-term leases.
So if you had to bring a kiosk into one of our retail environments, I say to you, sure, okay, John, let's test this out, okay? Let's do a short-term lease, okay? That way, if it doesn't work out, we shake hands after 3 months, we walk away. There's no significant financial loss for you if it doesn't work, and we have the flexibility to relocate you to a different retail environment.
It would create a huge demand because everyone would then flock to those buildings because they know they don't have to sign up to a long-term lease. If you have these really short-term leases, you got so much demand, you can fill that thing up no problem.
The advantage is finding things to generate income. It requires that, I know I've said it before, that out-of-the-box thinking, because there are so many ways to make money. If we look at a building, just taking off the traditional landlord cap.
Yes.
Welcome to the Corner Office, where we bring you the latest news from the world of commercial real estate, the greatest voices in the industry, and the corporate chats you've been missing. Let's get to it.
Okay, we're here with Dylan Koning today, who's Redefine's alternative income manager, nationally focused on their portfolio. Redefine's one of the largest listed real estate funds. They have over 292 properties nationally. They focus across all asset classes. They've been around. We know the guys very, very well. They've got brilliant assets. And, you know, Dylan, you coming with a background of media, really, and you're looking at this huge income stream that getting pulled into Redefine, and you bring your media background. But what was really interesting in our sort of chat before is that that's not the only income stream. There's a lot of others. So great to have you here. And I just wanted to jump in and maybe we can start with, what is alternative income? 100%. We used to call it something else,
non-GLA.
Non-GLA
yes.
income, yeah.
So,
change.
Cool, thanks, John. I think, first of all, thanks for having me and that little introduction. Yes, and I think we used to call it non-GLA, and specifically because the area that we operate in is specifically away from your generic GLA spaces. So alternative income basically is everything but your GLA space, whether it be, you know, over the office, industrial or retail sectors.
And GLA, for everyone who's not familiar with the term, is gross lettable area. 100%. So if you look at an office, it's the actual floor space that you can stand on. Maybe it's a balcony, but it's not the sort of common area. So it's your lettable area for want of a better word. And so what we're saying about non is everything that doesn't relate to the rental derived from the floor space that you're actually renting as a tenant. Yeah.
100%. And I think, I mean, to elaborate on that, I mean, the fantastic part about non-GLA/alternative income is that we don't have restrictions on where we can operate. So to give you an example, the areas should be, like I said, common areas within the retail portfolio, including things like the rooftops, the parking areas, parking lots, undeveloped land, basements, vacant spaces. Basically, like I said, everything out of your generic GLA letting space.
So recently we talked to Roger Barrow and we were talking about paddle courts. Yes. That was specifically the focus of the conversation. And would you now consider that type of thing non-GLA?
100%. So again, in the common areas, we're busy with 2 paddle courts at the moment in 2 properties. One is on a rooftop, actually in the CBD of Sandton, and one out in Centurion's side of the world. So definitely, everything that falls in that scope is something that we look after.
Let's approach this process, right? So we've discussed what non-GLA is and where you find these non-GLA areas, but let's talk about the categories of what makes us up. Obviously, we've talked about signage. Yes. This is the big media signage, these Correct. Massive billboards. You come from Cape Town, billboards are a problem there. We can't you can't get them approved. You can get them approved here like nobody's business. This is in Johannesburg. But let's talk about the other ones.
Yeah, so obviously media is one of our biggest income generators for the department, alternative income department. One of our second, not in any specific order, I mean, we look after the kiosk spaces inside the retail environments, as well as the promotional spaces. And then we've got other things like our rooftop leases with our M&Os. So we literally use our rooftop spaces to rent out Edel and DAS systems to the M&Os of the world, the MTNs, Vodacoms, etc.
M&O being?
M&Os being the Vodacoms.
Okay, so the big media media communications guys. Sure. Network operators.
Mobile network operator. Sorry.
Done.
Lost that one quickly.
We got it.
And then also things like Wi-Fi and fiber infrastructure inside our buildings, which is a nice value add to our tenants and shoppers inside our retail environments. And we even use our vacant buildings for things like film shoots. So a lot of media houses, film shoot houses come to us and they look for dressed office space or vacant office space, parking lots, rooftops, etc. And we allow them, we rent them out for the day or for 2 days for their film shoots. One big example is Fear Factor. They've used our rooftop in Cape Town a few times where they've slid from one building to the other. That's the extent that we can go to in our department to generate income for Redefine.
We also talked about in some of the retail where you guys are the guys that wash the cars.
Correct.
It's another form of non-GLA, right?
Correct.
Okay. There was all the laundry services.
Laundry services, that's a bit of a touch and go here and there. Look, like the car washes generally fall under us, okay? Parking solutions, that's strictly GLA, okay? So we don't get involved with that. But to give you another example, I don't know if you've seen the We Buy Cars as well, buying pods. And they actually...
Yes, I have. Yeah.
So we've got about 8 to 10 of them in our properties, and that will fall strictly with us. Things like markets we've done in the parking areas, in basement areas, that also falls with us. So anything creative that is outside, letting normal space is what we get our hands on.
Interesting. In the States, I've seen, tell me what you think about this concept, because I keep thinking about this parking lot across the way, although I know it's going to be a parking lot now, but there are other spaces I find around a Rosebank, which is a really pedestrian type of society, more so than, let's say, Sandton.
Yes.
Sandton's less pedestrian, more sort of inward facing, less outward facing. And I look at these parking lots, and there's a one of the areas in the States, and I'm just struggling to remember it at the moment, but what they've done is all of these food trucks, they tell them all to come and park there. They actually become a permanent fixture where it's created a food truck environment. It's like a brilliant restaurant type of retail trade that they literally created on a parking lot. What about that kind of idea here? Do you think it could work?
I think it's definitely very much area specific. So Cape Town, you would know, markets are a big thing in down in the Western Cape. And we've seen it done quite successfully at one of our competitors, where they have the food trucks the last Sunday of every month. And when I say from an experience wise, it's absolutely phenomenal. It is absolutely epic because you've got everything, every offering, every variety, and then you create this sort of community vibe on the Sunday that people look forward to. So, and to your point, an area like Rosebank, fantastic idea.
I think it'd be good
for something like that.
Galleria.
Let's
get it going.
Yeah. Anyway, no comment on Galleria for now.
But, Galleria is a property in Rosebank owned, I think, between yourselves and Abland.
Correct. Yes.
Yep. So it's an enormous site. It's at the moment a hole in the ground.
Correct.
So it goes down to parking level, basement level, or whatever it is. You should turn it into more parking. That's what you should start with.
Lack in Rosebank
cheapest. Just put more parking there to start off with. But the funny thing about it is that if you are at Redefine's office, you look honest.
100%.
It just must burn you every single day.
I think prior to me joining, I remember colleagues tell me stories of the demolition of that and how they all sat at Redefine watching the demolition. I wish I was there on the day just to experience that. But a brilliant opportunity with regards to alternative income on that particular property is that property has been vacant for, it's not vacant because it's nothing's there at the moment. So we've currently got a proposal to do a building wrap there. So that's a nice way. It's a perfect way for other funds in the sense of we've got nothing on the premises at the moment. Why don't we find another way to generate income?
Yeah. And tell me, a lot of this non-GLA stuff, right? And effectively alternative income. When you look at that, do you find that there's a balance between the tenant satisfaction and putting in these additional things? Some of it becomes an additional service, for example. So that improves the tenants' lives. But some of them, do you find that the tenants sometimes have an issue, or do you get any of that type of thing? Well, we don't want this here, or...
I think definitely, yes. Some tenants are a bit more challenging than others, specifically if it's a single tenanted building where you have a large corporate that wants to own branding preference on the building. But in that way, being redefined it's just a general conversation. What are your concerns? How can we get over these concerns? What can we do, from a challenge perspective to make you at ease what we propose? At the end of the day, the tenant is our main income stream, so we need to keep them happy. But like I will gladly say that 99% of the time we get away with, we come to a conclusion with the tenant in a very positive way.
Okay. And so you take a building. So we've got the different types of buildings. So obviously your retail centers and those have certain solutions that you can that you can drive into them. Then you've got your offices, and then I suppose industrial comes. There's not much you can do with industrial. I mean, you could probably do your mobile network operator, masts, maybe some branding, maybe the signage. Signage is probably really big there. But you can't do the other things. It's not like you can go and add a car cleaning service or something, you know.
For sure.
But do you have almost a playbook that you sit with your offices and you say, okay, we have 100 offices. Here's our playbook and let's go through it. Number one, do you think it's an opportunity for us to do signage here? No, it's not on a main road. Okay, the signage is out. Two, do you think is that how you approach a building?
So yes and no. Because obviously there are different aspects, like I mentioned before, with regards to the different avenues we can use to generate the income. So to give you an example on industrial, we're busy with a very nice, exciting new project that we've never thought of before. So if that comes to fruition, it will be a fantastic income generator for the industrial sector. But to your point, or to answer the question, yes, we don't come with a playbook, but it's our job, ultimately, me and my team. Our team consists of 14 people on a national basis.
Yeah.
So we go to the building, we see what we can do, everything, like I mentioned, from the fiber to rooftop to even venue hire from a locations perspective for the film shoot. So we know our portfolio quite well, and if there is an opportunity, I can guarantee that 99% of the time that opportunity is already in play, or there's already existing infrastructure from an alternative income perspective in the building.
Yeah.
But not necessarily a playbook. We obviously have a guideline that's stuck in our heads.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I said, any opportunity for us, new or existing, we will make sure that.
Outside of your portfolio, is that something that you do? Do you go and look at the neighbor's property? Do you go and propose your solution to third-party clients? Is what I'm trying to say.
We don't. Obviously, only strictly work for Redefine. And what is fantastic about our industry, and more specifically my experience at Redefine, is that we incorporated this department in 2016. And it was run by Douglas Main, one of my mentors personally. And we basically set the trend for a lot of other landlords to follow. Because there is such a big captive income audience that could be done on the actual building. So yeah, I think the way forward is to just think out of the box with regards to what you can do with a building.
Sure.
And I think a lot of other landlords have started to catch on, and there are opportunities out there. Let's
talk numbers. I know you can't share a lot of the numbers, but there must be a few that you can share with us. Give me an example of, how much, let's say you've got a building that you're sitting with 10% yield. How can you drive that? What percentage of the income can you take that to? Some success cases maybe?
Sure.
Give me an example of what you can do here.
So I think one of Redefine's major strategic objectives is to invest strategically, okay? And going back to what I was saying earlier, we were one of the first landlords in the industry that decided to invest in the infrastructure. So your media industry in general, you'll get a media partner that will come to a landlord and say, listen, let me put up a billboard on your property and you will get X amount with regards to revenue share or flat rental.
Yeah.
We then flipped the coin and said, Doug then flipped the coin and said, let us fund the capex for this infrastructure so that we can get the lion's share. So, like I said, from an industry trend perspective, that was never done before. And we were the first people to go to the media industry and say, guys, listen, we're happy to be in an amazing partnership with you. However, we want to fund the structures.
Yeah.
So because of that strategy, like the investing strategically perspective, it's been very lucrative for us as Redefine. And to give you an example specifically on office, since 2016 up until now, 2024, it's our financial year end on the 31st of August, we've grown the office portfolio by 193%.
Sure.
Yes.
Wow, that's quite impressive.
And it's just because of this strategic investment.
Yeah. And now, when you look at it from a tenant's perspective now, which of these service offerings, as it were, are more, do they make the building more attractive? Because there's an element of, okay, we receive X amount of income on the alternative, the X amount of alternative income. But, similar to when you look at like a green building, P grade green building, we're seeing less vacancy in those buildings because they're just nicer environments to be in. Your utility costs are lower, so your total cost of occupancy is lower. So tenants like that, and so they trend toward those buildings. Are you finding that with the alternative income that you're putting in these buildings, are there certain of those that are attractors to tenants? I mean, some aren't. I mean, if you go and say, guys, guess what? We're going to put more cell phone masts on the roof. It's probably not going to attract a tenant. But there must be those that also attract tenants.
So I think what a value add for the tenants would be. So let's speak specifically around fiber. Okay. So all of our buildings are completely 100% reticulated. Okay, through an open access network. So what we do is we partner with a fiber partner, and they will come reticulate a particular building. Okay. So from a connectivity perspective, you as a tenant that move in, it's an open access network. So you can still use your preferred ISP, whether it be Vox or Vodacom or whomever.
So it's a plug and play type of operation. Yeah.
The upside,
are all of your buildings like that?
95% of our buildings are like that, okay? And what happens is from a connectivity perspective, okay, there's no additional wait time. So if a tenant moves in 5 days later, okay, working with our fiber partner, they are up and running from a connectivity perspective. So you as a tenant don't have to, and especially your larger corporates, they have their preferred ISPs. All they want to do is come to the building, connect, and make sure that everything is up and running. Sure. So that's a huge benefit, a 5-day lead time with regards to your connectivity. One of the other value adds, specifically on the retail side, is we're the only listed fund that offers 3 hours uncapped Wi-Fi, okay, with a 500 meg line across our retail properties. So there's no crap, there's no throttling. You walk into one of our centers, you connect, it's a one-time connection. And what's fantastic, if you go from one of Redefine's malls to another Redefine mall, you don't have to sign up when you get to the next mall. You automatically connected, and Bob's your uncle for those 3 hours. You've got your free 3-hour Wi-Fi. So yes, there are definite value adds. The fiber, you mentioned the rooftops. I mean, how many times have you gone to a commercial building in and around Sandton, and you go into the left basement and you've got zero connectivity? You can't open your WhatsApp, you can't make a phone call.
Almost always.
100%. And that's where we rely on our partners with regards to our rooftop leases to ensure that we've got that self-connectivity inside a building.
This building, for example, you don't get Wi-Fi. I'm not going to mention them again because I've mentioned them pretty much every podcast, but I do love them and they are great landlords. So, but I won't mention them in this podcast. Okay, so one of the other things I want to find out is you've got an industrial building, right? And you've got it's perfect. It's got huge amount of exposure, and you're going for the signage opportunity. What are these typically cost? Because the structure, you're going to go up and you're going to erect the structure, okay? And then your advertising partners are going to then find advertising deals for you, basically. Yes. So they're going to go to whatever, Heineken. Yep. And Heineken wants to advertise there, and they're going to put this board up. Do you have a situation where, let's say the industrial tenant is SAB and they say you can't advertise Heineken? Does that exist? How do you protect your clients?
That happens very often, specifically in the media industry. And this is not a challenge that us as Redefine face. All the media players face the same challenge, or all the landlords, let me rather say. So yes, one of our main rules is obviously no competitor branding. So if we take a retail outlet, for example, if we've got a KFC on the premises and a Nando's wants to advertise, we generally decline. However, there are some situations where the brand is so big and it's not necessarily threatened by another brand, but we still have that conversation with them first.
Yeah.
So yes, it does happen in the industry, but like I said, the single tenanted buildings. I mean, if we, for instance, we own Alexander Forbes, we're not obviously going to go advertise one of their competitors on our screen on their building that they occupy.
Got you. Okay, so it's almost like if it became a direct challenge, then you're not going to go.
Correct. But to your point, I mean, with regards to the inventory that we have, if we've got an insurance house, I mean, you've seen the amount of branding that the big budgets that the insurance houses have. It's the Nakeds, the Pineapples, etc., etc. So they can obviously advertise on our platforms, because even there are direct competitors, they don't mind. They just want the visibility from a brand perspective.
Okay. And then how do you guys sort of track and manage this income? Do you track this income in a normal MDA system, or have you built your own tech, or how are you managing this whole piece?
So we're guided by the business. We use all the same tools that Redefine does use. Okay, we have obviously our own specific budget that we need to achieve. So what we'll do is we'll sit with the asset managers and go through the opportunities on the buildings, and we'll say to the asset managers, we've just done our budgeting for our next financial year. So I will go to an asset manager and say, let's just say commercial. Last year I gave you X amount. This year I'm going to give you X amount plus 8 or 9 or 10%. And what's interesting from a budgetary perspective is obviously It's easy from a GLA perspective. No, my tenant's paying me 8% escalation. Bob's your uncle. We're good to go. We're going to reach our target. Whereas us, with regards to media, the industry doesn't work like that. Brands pull out. I mean, Coca-Cola pulled out from a advertising perspective in 2022, 2023, where they just took their entire budget away and said, we're not spending anything on out-of-home. They moved that whole budget into social media, all the different channels on social media. And then all of a sudden in 2024, they've now come back. We're obviously happy to have them back. So it's very hard for us to budget.
Give me your feeling of, my sense, is there's been a hell of a lot of positivity come this election being over and I think a new government being installed and it actually being well received, and there seems to be a sense of positivity there. How do these economic conditions impact your alternative income stream?
Look, I can't comment on the political side. What I can say is that we did notice a bit of slump from an expenditure perspective. Your brands and your agencies weren't particularly spending, but luckily for us, it recovered very quickly.
When was this? When was the slump? Post. Okay.
Yes.
Interesting.
So, and I think to give you a little bit of insight on the media industry, how they will work is you've got your bigger brands that will book through your media buying agencies, okay, or they'll go directly to the media houses, okay, and it's very much the relationship that you as the media house have with the brand direct, okay, or the agencies, the buying agencies. Yeah. So if those relationships are good and strong relationships, you know that, and if you're selling your inventory correctly, you're always going to have repeat brands booking with you.
Yeah. And so do you feel, what do you, if we look at real estate, we're looking at GDP growth, big indicator, and then interest rates is the other one. So interest rates dropping, fantastic for the real estate industry because obviously your cost of capital comes down. But then secondly, GDP growth, because you're getting a growth in the economy, which means a general take-up of space overall. It's not just a cannibalization of different portfolios. You're seeing a growth. So those are the two leading indicators. Do they have and again, commercial property, these leases are 3 to 5 year leases, some cases 10. And so it's almost a lagging indicator of where the rentals are, but you'll start to see that sort of unwinding in the market as the next 2-3 years go by. I would imagine alternative income is a lot more tangible. You feel it immediately in the market when there's maybe a negative sentiment or a positive sentiment. It's almost, give it a month, boom, and you're gonna see that income. What are you tracking? What are you trying to see in terms of the market and where you're gonna experience growth? What are you?
Interesting question, and I think it's a bit hard to answer that question from our side. From a media perspective, we're governed by what happens in the industry.
Yes.
Okay. And going back to the Coca-Cola example, that hit all media owners. Okay. Not only obviously Redefine. So if a big brand, like a global brand, pulls out in that sense, it affects the entire industry.
Got you.
If I give another example, for instance, with regards to COVID, specifically on the retail side, from a kiosk perspective, we just wanted our tenants to survive and stay. And are you on a revenue share, or what?
No. What are those kiosks typically? Just a rental.
Kiosks are a flat rental, okay, and obviously it works like normal real estate. The closer you are to the beach, I always say, the higher you're going to pay from a square meter perspective. We don't necessarily work on square meterage. It's all very much based on location. Like I said, if you want to be close to an anchor tenant, you're going to pay a bit more.
Proximity to Woolworths or something.
Checkers of Woolworths, etc. So one of the upsides for alternative income specifically is that we do short-term leases. Okay, so we don't do your 3 to 5 year leases. And the upside for a tenant,
what is a short-term lease?
Short-term lease, 3 to 6 months. So if you had to bring a kiosk into one of our retail environments, I'll say to you, sure, okay, John, let's test this out, okay? Let's do a short-term lease, okay? That way, if it doesn't work out, we shake hands after 3 months, we walk away. There's no significant financial loss for you if it doesn't work. And we have the flexibility to relocate you to a different retail environment. And
there's a school of thought that says all leases should be short-term leases. Okay, so what happens is you've got the banks that effectively control the capital, and they very much, whether Redefine or whoever likes it or not, the bank is the partner, the major partner, basically. So the banks want to see long-term leases because they're risk averse and they want long-term capital security, and so they'll loan you money based on the length of your lease. Now that drives the behavior of then the fund. In the alternative, if the fund went and said, all of our leases are month to month, we don't mind. at your behest. We will only be able to kick you out or cancel your lease every 5 years, okay? But you can cancel your lease every month or 3 months. Maybe give it 3 months. Maybe that's a little bit more fair. It would create a huge demand because everyone would then flock to those buildings because they know that they don't have to sign up to a long-term lease. And this might work predominantly in maybe the B grade stable, where those businesses are, making decisions. Maybe they're in a significant growth phase. They don't know how much space to take. Maybe they just sign a short-term lease. On the other hand, you've got this, tenant installation allowance that the landlords give, where they might give a month per year of lease that you sign. So if you're only signing a month lease, the landlord's not going to give you much in terms of capital. So you've got to take that capital spend on yourself. But there's this school of thought that it creates demand actually to have short leases. And I'm seeing with what you're saying to me is that if you have these really short-term leases, you got so much demand, you can fill that thing up no problem. And so it's quite an interesting situation that you're in, because immediately you can see if there's a huge demand and the product's going to work, you can adjust your rentals.
That question is twofold, and I think my answer will be twofold.
Yeah.
I think first of all, so to be clear, we don't offer TIs on the kiosk and promotional spaces.
Sure.
And the reason for that is that we firmly believe that if you, as a operator,
do you have a bare minimum? I mean, you don't want someone to come and just put a trellis table out there, So
no. So we've got certain standards that we obviously need to adhere to.
Yes.
So I mean, table trading is fantastic in certain markets. We have nothing against it. Like I said, we've got a certain standard that we need to appeal, and we've even designed a kiosk design guide for operators, specifically new SMMEs that are emerging in the market and want to test their brand. We say to them, okay, Mr. Potential Tenant, here's an 8-page document. We speak about branding. We speak about merchandising. We speak about the requirements that they need to adhere to. We give them tips on, what happens on the first day of trading, et cetera, and
amazing.
A full-on guide so that they can be
it's almost a small business incubator.
100%.
Right.
So yes, I think with regards to a short-term leases, like I'm saying, the opportunity to relocate, and I've seen this many a time where we have a certain mall in a certain area and we think the brand is going to thrive in that for that particular target audience, and then unfortunately it doesn't work. But then again, all we do is move them into try another retail environment.
Yes.
And see if it could potentially work.
Got you. And tell me, how does one get onto your list of potentials? You got an SME. I'm sure there are lots of guys sitting out there saying, "Jeepers, I didn't know I could be in Sandton City, for example, or I didn't know I could be in Hyde Park Mall, or I didn't know I could be in any of these fantastic shopping centres." I haven't mentioned any of yours so far.
Yes,
but I'm just thinking about what's around us. But you're sitting there as a tenant and you think, I'd love to be in that space. How do you even start to get the opportunity to be there?
Well, look, I think so. Certain categories within our retail environments are obviously saturated. Okay, so with our team on a national basis, the opportunities lie in the sense of we follow the main leasing guide of the center itself. Okay, and we will go out and find a specific tenant to match the mall's leasing guide.
Yeah.
Okay, but as a tenant, I mean, all you need to do is look at what properties are available and contact one of our teams.
Just get hold of Redefine.
Get hold of Redefine on the website, on our social media channels, and we will attend to whatever query you have. Whether we can accommodate or not accommodate, we're always very upfront and respond within the same day and say, guys, thank you for the opportunity. Let's set up a meeting and have a conversation. Or, we actually can't accommodate at present, but then we add you to our leads list. We got a full leads list. And so should a vacancy come through for instance, for the fragrance sector, I've got a certain list of leads that I can go to at any point in time.
Great. And I'd imagine that you get a list of operators who you now trust and that you're working with, and so that they can expand in your portfolio. Yeah.
Correct. Also, we've got a whole bunch of national tenants that we have very good relationships with in the kiosk spaces that operate, like I said, nationally with us.
Got you. Okay. Then it's been fascinating chatting to you. I mean, it kind of opens up a whole world, and we mentioned before just some of the numbers actually that you're dealing with, which are incredible, to be honest. I mean, that's a significant portfolio. It's really, really, really well done to you and your team at Redefine. But and I'm not going to mention the number. I know everyone wants to know, but I'm not going to tell you what the number is because I've been told not to. But I really think it's incredible, and it's such a great business to have grown up, obviously in a brilliant amongst a brilliant stable of properties. And I think it's just some good innovative thinking there from Redefine. And like you mentioned, there are other guys following suit. It would be interesting if you guys started to offer it as a service outside of Redefine. You know, there's nothing to, I can't imagine that you'd be cannibalizing your own space. So maybe we see that in the future.
Yeah, I think I alluded to it earlier. A lot of other people have done similar things or doing the same thing. And what's fantastic about my industry within a listed fund is that we all know each other from the alternative income space, from the media space. We all work with the media partners. We all work with the M&Os. So it's a very small circle of colleagues and competitors. So it's picking each other's brains. What are you guys doing here? Has this worked for you? No, this has worked for me on this portfolio, or this has worked on a different set of commuter malls, etc., etc. And I think, for me, the advantage is, finding things to generate income. And it requires that, I know I've said it before, that out of the box thinking, because there are so many ways to make money with, if you look at a building, just taking off the traditional landlord cap.
Yes. Give us an example of something that you've recently discovered or recently sort of innovated as a new income stream that you could put in place. I mean, paddle courts is obviously one of the examples.
So there's two, from a media perspective, there's a new trend called fake out of home, okay? And then what that incorporates, it's very big in the States at the moment, and as well as in the UK, where, you've got your beautiful P-grade offices, and what you'll physically do is you'll stand outside with your phone. They just did one at Metropolitan now. And did you see it? It was absolutely amazing. So you physically stand there in front. It was a Women's Day campaign. And you stand in front of the building and you open your social media page and you've got these live 3D anamorphic elements that wrap around the building from a campaign perspective. It's absolutely phenomenal.
No, that's what do you mean?
Links. So you open up your Instagram, you stand in the building,
yes.
okay, and the campaign will run for that day. And then you'll see, so you watching through your phone, okay, you'll see the physical building, and then you'll see these anamorphic elements live on your screen.
Amazing.
Absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, that sounds interesting.
So that's a trend that's immersing here in South Africa at the moment. Another one, we've just partnered with a electric charging vehicle business. We're rolling out 8 of them in our properties. EVs are on the rise and have been on the rise in SA for the past couple of months. Also another value add for our tenants, but also, we need to be future facing, to see what trends are coming through. So that one for us is quite a nice one. There's not really income, but there's a value add for tenants in our buildings. What else did I
Where would you say most of the innovations coming from? The US or UK or South Africa innovating? Where?
So what's interesting is there's a lot of obviously case studies from a media perspective, and I will say that South Africa specifically is in the top 10 of the world with regards to the innovations, specifically on the media perspective.
Wow.
If you look at, obviously, and it's interesting in the sense from a media buying perspective, us as South Africans, we are very mall-centric because of the entertainment perspective. So we necessarily don't only go to the mall to shop, we go to watch films, to eat. So we don't have high street fashion like the UK, Hollywood Boulevard, or in New York, what's the street with all the fashion, with the fashion shops. So because of that South African amazing culture, being mall-centric, the way people buy media or consume media in South Africa is very different with regards to the trends that are overseas. So it's almost sometimes difficult to make the comparison between the two.
Yeah.
Because as of South Africa, we're actually quite brand loyal as a country, if you compare it to the rest of the world.
Yeah. And I suppose a lot of these activations, in Dubai is a big one. You always see there's always some kind of car activation that they're putting in, in the airport or whatever. Their car's parked and there's a big windlass or whatever. You don't see a lot of that in South Africa, but you could probably see a little bit more.
So what's very interesting that you say that. We do quite a lot of activations in the retail front. We've got a lot of the dealerships that book on a monthly basis with us. And the only reason why they do that is because, number one, they have access to the footfall. Number two, they have their sales guys on team.
Yes.
And what we've noticed, this is just individual conversations with the likes of the different car brands, is that while mom is shopping, dad generally doesn't necessarily want to go into the shops. So he floats around the vehicles, he has a look at it, not necessarily going to buy, but they come back because they sell cars off the floor space, the court space, inside the malls.
That's got to piss mom off.
Well, sometimes it's for moms, so it's not a bad thing.
Buying a Land Rover.
And I think I really want to mention something else in the sense of, obviously, my main role and my team's role is to bring income. But we've worked really hard on the SED front as well as the CSI front, where, for instance, we've offered free advertising over our network of 22 screens nationally to local upcoming businesses, okay, all within our area. So that value at the moment for the half year, when the half year was in end of Feb, sits at 6.5 million rands worth of free advertising.
Wow.
Okay. And again, local businesses, okay, we offer them this free advertising from a brand exposure perspective.
I think the incubator effect here is great. It's something I hadn't thought about, but it's a great impact. And I think it's one of the spaces in the country that we really, really, really need to focus on, is that incubator, bringing the SMEs up. Because if we can be an entrepreneurial society, I mean, the growth will be exponential.
I've got another perfect example to your point. What we did this past 12 months is we interviewed a few kiosk tenants, potential kiosk tenants, and we said, right, we'll find you a location. Obviously, the product needs to match the particular retail outlet. We'll give you 1 year's free rental. Okay, you just cover your overheads with regards to your utilities. And I'm very happy to say it's been a very successful campaign thus far. This particular tenant has been trading now. I think they're in the 11th month of trading. And from a tenant mix perspective, we put them in between their perfect niche market. And the goal is eventually to turn them into a GLA tenant.
Yes.
But we've taken this brand, given them free exposure from an advertising, a marketing support, as well as obviously free trading. And they're doing very well at the moment.
Amazing. Yeah, that's a great story. We need more of those. Dylan, it's been brilliant talking to you. I mean, it's what a fascinating space you're working in. I encourage you to continue to grow that little SME space, because I think that's really the bedrock of, I think, our community in South Africa, and really impressive. Yeah, so congrats to you and the team.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.